Russia's recent proposal of a loyalty agreement for foreigners marks a significant development in the country's legislative landscape. This draft legislation, prepared by the Interior Ministry, raises questions about the extent of freedom of expression for non-citizens entering the nation. Inextricably tied to President Vladimir Putin's narrative, the loyalty agreement emerges against the backdrop of the 2024 presidential election. As Russia positions itself in an increasingly assertive manner on the global stage, this loyalty pact becomes a pivotal element in shaping the nation's image and priorities. This overview will delve into the key aspects of the loyalty agreement, its implications, and its role within the broader political context of the upcoming presidential election. In the aftermath of Russia's deployment of troops into Ukraine in February 2022, the nation witnessed the implementation of stringent laws aimed at quelling dissent and maintaining a unified narrative. These laws, characterized by their severity, target individuals critical of official policies, particularly regarding military actions. As opposition activists faced lengthy jail sentences, a climate of restricted expression took root, setting the stage for a broader crackdown on dissenting voices. The loyalty agreement, currently under consideration, must be understood within this broader context of repression against opposition forces. It emerges as part of a comprehensive strategy employed by the Russian government to control narratives and limit expressions that diverge from the state-sanctioned viewpoint. As the 2024 presidential election looms, the loyalty agreement becomes not only a legal instrument, but also a political tool, reflecting the government's efforts to solidify control and stifle opposition voices in the face of domestic and international scrutiny. Key points of the loyalty agreement: prohibition on criticizing official policy and discrediting Soviet military history. The loyalty agreement places a significant restriction on foreigners entering Russia, prohibiting them from openly criticizing official policy. Additionally, a notable constraint exists regarding the discrediting of Soviet military history. This reflects a deliberate effort to safeguard the government's narrative and historical perspectives. Restriction on contravening traditional family values. A crucial aspect of the loyalty agreement is the imposition of restrictions on contravening traditional family values. Foreigners are expected to adhere to a set of predefined norms, aligning with Russia's cultural and societal expectations related to family structures and values. Emphasis on portraying the war as an existential battle with the West. The loyalty agreement underscores a specific narrative concerning Russia's military engagements, particularly framing the war as an existential battle with the West. By emphasizing this perspective, the agreement aligns with President Putin's overarching narrative, positioning the conflict as a defense of Russia's values against perceived Western decadence. This strategic framing extends the influence of the loyalty agreement beyond individual behavior, contributing to a broader ideological stance. Draft legislation details. Prepared by Russia's Interior Ministry. The proposed loyalty agreement is a product of Russia's Interior Ministry, signifying a governmental initiative to regulate the conduct and expressions of foreigners entering the country. This underscores the official and regulatory nature of the loyalty pact. Compulsory signing for all foreigners. Entering Russia. The draft legislation mandates that all foreigners entering Russia are obliged to sign the loyalty agreement. This comprehensive requirement extends its reach to encompass every incoming foreign national, irrespective of the purpose or duration of their stay. Restrictions on interfering with public authorities and discrediting state policies. A core component of the loyalty agreement involves stringent restrictions on the behavior of foreigners within Russia. Specifically, individuals are prohibited from interfering with the activities of public authorities and from engaging in any form of discrediting the foreign and domestic state policies of the Russian Federation. Clauses covering morality, family, propaganda about non-traditional sexual relations, and history. The loyalty agreement incorporates a range of clauses addressing diverse aspects of conduct. These include clauses related to morality, family values, and prohibitions against any form of propaganda about non-traditional sexual relations. Additionally, the draft legislation places specific emphasis on preserving the historical narrative, preventing the distortion of the historical truth about critical events, such as the Soviet people's role in World War II. This multifaceted approach illustrates the comprehensive scope of the loyalty agreement, extending its influence over various facets of public expression and behavior. Repercussions and implementation. TASS report on repercussions. Not specified. While the loyalty agreement draft legislation has been brought to public attention, a TASS report indicates that the specific repercussions for foreigners who might violate the agreement have not been explicitly specified. This lack of clarity raises questions about the potential consequences and penalties that individuals might face if they fail to adhere to the stipulations outlined in the Loyalty Pact. Draft law, yet to be formally introduced in Parliament. As of the present, the draft legislation has not been formally introduced in the Russian Parliament. The absence of a formal introduction suggests that the loyalty agreement is still in the preliminary stages of consideration, allowing for further review and potential amendments before becoming a formalized law. Process required for the draft to become law. To transition from a draft to law, the loyalty agreement must follow a defined legislative process. This involves introduction to the State Duma, Russia's lower house of parliament, where it undergoes committee review and multiple readings. Only after successfully navigating these stages can the draft legislation be submitted to President Putin for formal signing, making it an integral part of Russia's legal framework. The complexity of this process underscores the significance and potential impact of the loyalty agreement on the legal landscape once implemented. New regulations on foreign visitors, anticipation of the 2024 presidential election. The introduction of new regulations, particularly the proposed loyalty agreement, aligns with the anticipation surrounding the 2024 presidential election in Russia. As President Vladimir Putin positions himself for an extended tenure, these regulations serve not only as legal measures, but also as tools to shape and control narratives during a crucial political period. Stringent restrictions on criticism of Ukraine, crisis and LGBTQ issues. The new regulations, exemplified by the loyalty agreement, impose stringent restrictions on foreign visitors. Specifically, criticism related to the Ukraine crisis and expressions supportive of LGBTQ issues are targeted. This reflects a deliberate effort to control the discourse surrounding sensitive geopolitical matters and social issues, aligning with the government's established narratives. Foreigners, agreeing to comply with prohibitions, protecting Russia's national interests. Central to the new regulations is the requirement for foreign visitors to agree, upon entering Russia, to comply with prohibitions aimed at safeguarding the national interests of the country. This not only underscores the government's assertive stance on protecting its perceived interests, but also places an obligation on foreigners to conform to a set of predefined norms, contributing to the shaping of a specific image of Russia on the global stage. Unclear penalties and Kremlin's response. Lack of specified penalties for violating the loyalty agreement. Notably, the loyalty agreement introduces a level of ambiguity by not specifying the penalties for individuals who might violate its terms. The absence of clear consequences raises questions about the enforceability of the agreement and leaves the repercussions for non-compliance open-ended. This lack of transparency adds a layer of uncertainty to the potential impact on foreign visitors and their freedom of expression within Russia. Kremlin's silence on potential new regulations. In response to the proposed loyalty agreement and associated regulations, the Kremlin has maintained a conspicuous silence. The absence of an official statement or commentary from the highest echelons of power raises intrigue regarding the government's stance on these potential new regulations. The silence from the Kremlin creates an air of uncertainty about whether the government fully endorses or intends to modify the proposed loyalty pact, leaving room for speculation on the extent of its support and potential future actions. Impact on foreigners and media presence. Concerns about the impact on foreigners, especially from unfriendly countries. The proposed loyalty agreement raises legitimate concerns about its potential impact on foreigners entering Russia, particularly those from countries deemed unfriendly. The broad restrictions outlined in the agreement may create apprehension among visitors as they navigate the limitations on expression and behavior. The term unfriendly countries introduces an additional layer of uncertainty, leaving individuals from such nations uncertain about the extent to which their rights and freedoms may be curtailed. Departure of Westerners from Russia. Post-offensive in Ukraine. In the aftermath of Russia's offensive in Ukraine, there has been a notable exodus of Westerners from the country. The combination of geopolitical tensions and the implementation of stringent censorship rules has prompted many individuals, including expatriates and members of the international community, to reconsider their presence in Russia. This departure contributes to a shift in the demographics and cultural dynamics within the nation. Reduction of Western media presence in Moscow due to censorship rules. Censorship rules, implemented in response to the conflict in Ukraine, have had a tangible impact on Western media presence in Moscow. Fears for the safety of employees and concerns about the constraints on journalistic freedom have led to a significant reduction in the footprint of Western media outlets in the Russian capital. This diminishing presence underscores the challenges faced by international media organizations in navigating an environment where the freedom to report and express diverse perspectives is increasingly restricted. National interests and values. Upholding Russian values and laws. At the core of the loyalty agreement is a directive for foreigners to uphold Russian values and laws. This requirement reflects the government's commitment to asserting a specific set of cultural and societal norms, ensuring that those entering the country align with the established principles that form the foundation of Russian identity. Prohibition on distorting historical truth, particularly regarding World War II. The loyalty agreement places a significant emphasis on preserving the historical truth, especially concerning World War II. By prohibiting the distortion of historical narratives, particularly those related to the Soviet people's role in the war, the agreement seeks to safeguard a specific interpretation of events that hold immense cultural and national significance in Russia. Emphasis on traditional family values, marriage and traditional sexual relations. An integral component of the loyalty agreement is the emphasis on traditional family values, the institution of marriage, and traditional sexual relations. This underscores the government's commitment to promoting and preserving a specific societal structure that aligns with conservative principles. The Loyalty Pact becomes a tool through which the state seeks to enforce and protect these values, reflecting a broader cultural and moral stance in Russian society. Cultural and environmental restrictions. Prohibition on activities, neglecting Russia's environment and natural resources. The loyalty agreement introduces a prohibition on activities that neglect Russia's environment and natural resources. This clause underscores the government's commitment to environmental preservation and sustainable practices. By restricting actions that may harm the environment, the agreement reflects a conscious effort to balance economic development with ecological responsibility. Preservation of Russia's regional and ethno-cultural diversity and traditional values. Another significant aspect of the loyalty agreement is the emphasis on preserving Russia's regional and ethno-cultural diversity, along with traditional values. By including this clause, the government aims to protect the rich tapestry of cultures within the country. The Loyalty Pact becomes a mechanism to uphold and celebrate the various regional identities and cultural traditions that contribute to the overall mosaic of Russian heritage. This cultural preservation aligns with a broader narrative of national unity and diversity. Ethnic diversity and war impact. Overview of Russia's ethnically diverse population. Russia boasts one of the most ethnically diverse populations globally, with nearly 200 ethnic groups residing within its borders. This diversity is a testament to the historical, cultural, and geographical complexity of the Russian Federation, creating a mosaic of identities that contribute to the nation's vibrant social fabric. Historical context of ethnic policies. Since the October Revolution, the historical context of ethnic policies in Russia traces back to the October Revolution in 1917. In the aftermath, Bolshevik Moscow embraced Russian nationalism, privileging ethnic Russians as the most privileged group in the Soviet Union. This policy included the resettlement of Russian settlers to control non-Russian regions, shaping the ethnic landscape of the nation. Impact of the loyalty agreement on minority groups, accusations of being used in the war. Against the backdrop of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, minority groups within the country have raised accusations of being used as tools in the war. The loyalty agreement, with its broad restrictions and emphasis on preserving historical narratives, has a discernible impact on these minority communities. Reports indicate that certain areas with high minority populations have experienced disproportionate casualties in the conflict, further fueling accusations that these groups are being exploited in the geopolitical landscape. The loyalty agreement, with its cultural and moral stipulations, adds another layer of complexity to the experiences of minority communities. As the government seeks to enforce specific values, concerns arise about how these measures may affect the diverse ethnic groups within Russia and contribute to shaping their roles and perceptions in the ongoing geopolitical scenario. In summary, the loyalty agreement proposed by Russia's Interior Ministry carries profound implications for both the individuals subject to its terms and the broader geopolitical landscape, with key points including restrictions on criticism, the preservation of historical narratives, and the emphasis on cultural values. The agreement shapes the behavior and expressions of foreigners entering Russia. The lack of specified penalties and the Kremlin's reserved response add an element of uncertainty, leaving questions about the agreement's enforceability and the government's stance on potential regulations. Concerns about its impact on foreigners, particularly from unfriendly countries, and the departure of Westerners highlight the tangible consequences on international relations and the expatriate community. The loyalty agreement's significance extends beyond legalities, playing a pivotal role in Russia's political landscape, especially in the lead-up to the 2024 presidential election. It reflects a deliberate effort by the government to control narratives, solidify cultural values, and project a specific image of Russia on the global stage. In the context of ongoing geopolitical tensions, this loyalty pact becomes a symbol of the nation's assertive stance and its efforts to shape both domestic and international perceptions. As the agreement navigates the legislative process, its ultimate impact will be closely observed, influencing Russia's relationships with the international community and shaping the dynamics of freedom of expression within its borders.